morning, everyone. I normally say that welcome to the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College, but obviously we're not there. I'm sorry if I couldn't find a parking spot this morning. There's nothing rarer on a college campus than a parking spot. I want to thank Larry Zabar for helping really organize this event in a little bit of a different spot, so we're okay with that. We want to thank our sponsors, Politics and Eggs. Their names are listed on your table, but they're also BAE, Bank of America, Comcast, Dartmouth Health, Dominion Energy, DCI, Fidelity, Liberty Mutual, McLean Middleton, New England College, Liberty, Point 3 Health, Rath Young Utility, and TRC. So I want to thank them. I also want to mention we have some special guests here today. Senator John Sununu is here. Senator Sununu also teaches on campus, so sometimes we call him professor. The chairman of the Republican Party, Scott Maltese, is here. The Republican National Committee man, Bill O'Brien, is here. Candidate Holly Morleski is over here somewhere. My counselor, Counselor Janice Stevens, is here. Representative James Tebow is here. And the tireless Representative Ross Berry is also here someplace. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention the guy with the second best quips in the room, the Majority Leader of the House, Jason Osborne, is here as well, hot off a 3-month vacation at the State House. Politics and Eggs is a great tradition that we've done for many years with our great partners, the New England Council, New England's Chamber of Commerce. For purposes of introduction, I'd like to welcome the great Jim Brett up for introduction.
Neil stayed up all night for that intro. I really appreciate it. First of all, good morning, all of you. Thank you for weathering the rain to be here this morning. What a great turnout, to say the least. Neil and I go back many, many, many years. The Institute of Politics and New England Council, what a great, great relationship that we have and continue to have, and it's because of Neil and Ian. We're only as good as the senator would often say to staff. Staff is so important. They make us all look good, and Neil and your team make us look good, so I just say thank you. For purposes of the few people who don't know anything about the New England Council, if I could just be shameless and just say a minute or two, we just celebrated our 100th anniversary. We're nonpartisan. We don't endorse. We don't give grades. We don't give contributions. We don't have a PAC. We are a convener. We bring people together. And now more than ever, I think we need organizations like that. We're non-judgmental and try to find common ground on issues. And we bring together all of New England. So we go from Maine, Susan Collins, down to Connecticut, Chris Murphy, and all 21 members of Congress. That's what we do. We work with all the members of Congress, 21 members, the 12 United States Senators, the 6 governors, and they range from independent to Democrat, Republican. But what makes us unique is that we convene them, work on issues that are important, economic issues that hopefully will keep families here in New England, businesses to thrive, all federal issues. And it's a unique organization, 100 years old, but it's worked. And there are very few other organizations in the United States that are multi-state. We're all New England, so we have over 700 members, and they range from non-profits to the financial, higher ed, energy, innovation companies, and it's something to really marvel at. And when we go to Washington, we have speakers from the Democratic side, Republican side, the administration, because our members say we need access. And you're not there to make a judgment, and this one is good, or this one. Your job is to have access. And why we have access is our reputation. Reputation being a straight shooter, bringing people together. Now, more than ever, we need organizations like that. Can bring people together, where there's no name calling. Senator alludes to it about hate. We don't want any of those terms being used. We bring people to the table, and we try to find common ground. For 100 years, it's worked, so. That's the spiel in the New England Council. We have a lot of events coming up. Many of you who are members know of all our events that are coming up. And we thank you for your support of the New England Council. So let me just get into the senator. I just had an opportunity to meet the senator briefly, and he doesn't know, but I'm a longtime admirer of his candor. He tells it like it is, and some people really like it. Some people say he's too candid for me. But it is refreshing to meet somebody that doesn't give a spiel, you know, the CNN buzzword of the night, or do a tweet. He is somebody who thinks, and he thinks hard about the issues. And he is somebody that I think you're going to find very entertaining, but more importantly, informative on his views, where the country is, where it should be going in the future. I give you a little spiel on the book. I'm shameless. I love the book. I absolutely love the book. And I love it for a couple of reasons. One, needless to say, I don't know anyone that has better lines of humor in the Senate. And I can see why he would not spend $10,000 to get somebody to write jokes for him to do the gridiron. He could do it himself and save a lot of money and be a lot better. We'll get into a couple of his lines, but I just thought they were terrific. So the humor is great, but there's also, looking at his background, because he's had so many positions, you know, whether it was in the Department of Revenue, or the General Counsel, with Buddy Romer, but he also had some unsuccessful campaigns. I mean, he's a United States Senator now, but it just didn't happen to him. This is the third attempt, and he got elected in the third. To me, that's perseverance, that you don't give up. And nothing came easy, and he is a very unique individual, to say the least, but I want you to also know that in his book, he says very complimentary things about the senator here in New Hampshire, Jeanne Shaheen. He also says very complimentary things about Susan Collins, another New England. So he has this relationship that you may not be aware of, on both sides of the aisle, that really is commendable, because we need to have people in the United States Senate who have friends on the other side. The other side is not the enemy. The other side may be a loyal opposition, but not the enemy. You can always find something in common with them if you dig hard enough. No, they may like Cajun food, or they might, you know, I don't know how many people here will be LSU, but it might be. But the point is, if you give people an opportunity, you can get to know them and respect them. That's what the Senator is all about. So we're thrilled that he's here, but the book is a great read. To me, it's humor, it's perseverance, but it also talks about how he handles himself in one of the most important committees, Judiciary. That he really plans, he works, he writes, he researches the candidates, and because he knows it's a lifetime appointment. But the point is, he takes it seriously. So it's an education, and it's a book that I've been recommending to many people. Summer list, number one. This is the book to read. You'll enjoy it, but you'll also read a lot. With that, the Honorable Senator from Louisiana, Senator John Kennedy.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Well, let me thank you. That was a very kind and generous introduction. Before we get started, there are two people I want to recognize. First, one of the reasons I'm here, Senator John Edward Sununu. Also, my communications director, Nick Petromelis. Where's Nick?
Right here.
Here he is back here. Yeah. Nick is a proud graduate of St. A's.
Best 6 years of his life, right here.
I love New Hampshire. I love New Hampshire better than sex. Not really, okay? You get the point I'm trying to make is you've just got a wonderful state. And it's nice to be back.
So somebody who grew up in Zachary, Louisiana, small town, couple of thousand people, so small you didn't even have a town drunk. Men had to rotate every week to be the town. What was it like growing up in that town, and what values did you learn there that carried you on your professional career?
Well, Zachary, thank you, Jim, for that question. Zachary's a little small town north of Baton Rouge. When I grew up, it was about 3,000 people. It's much bigger now because Zachary set up its own independent school district, and the schools are so good and people flocked in. But when I grew up, very small town, about 3,000 people. Those of you who were raised in a small town know what a small town is. Everybody knows everybody's business. Everybody knows whose check is good and whose husband isn't. Some people found high school traumatic. I didn't. I love high school. I'd go back in a second. I cared about two things: basketball and cheerleaders. And I really wasn't very good at either one, but I had a lot of fun trying. But I learned when I went away and to a private university. I had a wonderful foundation from Zachary. I love it.
Was it your mother or your father that taught you early on to read and listen?
Oh, well, education, I have three brothers. My earliest memories from my parents were education. It's not if you're going to college, it's where you're going to college. My mom had a college degree, but my dad did too, Jim, but he was from a small town in Oklahoma, Depression family, 8 brothers and sisters, left home when he was 14 to go to another town where they had a high school, worked his way through high school as a janitor, got a degree from University of Oklahoma in petrochemical engineering, and came to Louisiana. So education was very important. And I have 3 brothers. One is a doctor on the East Coast, one's a doctor on the West Coast. My third brother, who is probably the smartest one of all, he went to LSU. He was not he was not an academic star. He likes to say he finished LSU in 2 terms, though, Carter's and Reagan's. But education was a big deal in my family.
Now, you went to Vanderbilt, and that's pretty prestigious. What was that experience like coming from Zachary, Louisiana, to go to Vanderbilt and being with all those mucky-mucks, coming from fancy schools?
It was, I had a good foundation academically first, but it was culturally, socially, it was a new experience because I was very provincial. I talk about it in the book. When I was in high school, exactly, this is back in the 60s and 70s, everybody went to Zachary High if you lived there. If you were a really bad kid, they would send you away to military school. And the only kids I knew from the area who didn't go to Zachary were sent away to military school. And when I first got to Vanderbilt, I met all these kids who had not gone to public school. You know, they'd gone to Woodbury Forest, and Phillips Exeter, and Choate, and I'm thinking the whole time, man, these must be some badass kids. You know? And they turned it around to get into Vanderbilt, and finally my roommate sat me down and said, "Kennedy, you don't know what a prep school is, do you?" And I said, "No," and he explained it to me. But I wrote this book. Can I just say
ask me about why you wrote the book.
Well, first I wrote it because they gave me money. Okay. And second, they said the book isn't due for a year, and I'll agree to anything a year from now. But I had written before, I taught law for 15 years, and I'd written law review articles and a case book for my class. But writing a book's very different. Much harder than I thought. I wrote it at my kitchen table, and mostly back home in Madisonville. It's not a policy book per se, it's a story book. And I try to use stories to make my points about policy. Some of the stories are funny, some are bizarre, they're all true. And I tried to use those stories to show people what Washington and politics in general is really like from the inside, to explain to people why in Washington normal is just a setting on the clothes dryer. It's a deeply weird place, and to explain to people why it doesn't have to be that way. And if you read it, I hope it'll make you think. It may make you daydream, because it's the unvarnished truth. But I enjoyed writing it after it was over.
The Senate has some great quotes in the book. I'm just going to read 2 or 3 of them. He's elected to the United States Senate. He's looking for an apartment on obviously walking distance of the Hart Building at the time, and he finds an apartment, 1 bedroom. He's probably shocked at what they're charging, but he described the unit as, quote, early Salvation Army. If you want to stump Lindsey Graham, just ask him to name a country. He wouldn't bomb. Mitch McConnell, deadpan, but deep. I did see him smile once in 2017. Chuck Grassley, the oldest member of the United States Senate, when he first came to the United States Senate, his first car was a Chariot. He's got some great lines, and he also talks about somebody that he might have lost a little of his fastball. Why is that? Well, it takes him an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. He has just great lines. So the book has been a great seller, 550,000 already, and so we know why it's on the New York Times bestseller. But let's probably get into your role in the United States Senate. There's a major piece of legislation that all of us in New England and all of, I think, America is very anxious to see passed. That's not a hyperbole. Housing, the housing piece of legislation. And what makes it a really appealing piece of legislation is that you have a senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, and Tim Scott, the Republican South Carolina, both sponsoring this piece of legislation.
Right.
That hopefully will speed up the permitting process to build more housing throughout the country. You and your colleagues passed this in the Senate. The House passed it, but doesn't seem to have the consensus yet to get the bill on the president's desk. Your thoughts on where this bill is going to go?
Well, we passed I don't need to tell you that we have a housing problem in America. 10, maybe 15 years ago, the average age of a first-time homeowner was 29. Today it's 39. The demand is there. We have to do something about the price. I'm not for price fixing. The only way to do something about the price is to increase the supply. We passed this bill, the housing bill, that I think will help. I'm biased, but the guts of it is a bill called the Bill Now Act that Senator Warren and I co-sponsored. Basically, goes to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is this. Federal government and to a large extent the state government has nothing to do with housing starts or zoning. That's a local matter, as it should be. But many of our municipalities and our local communities, they don't want new housing starts. They don't. Some just say, well, it'll increase congestion. Others say, if you increase the supply of homes, the value of my home will go down, a multitude of reasons, but the point is, if you want more houses, you're going to have to build them, duh. And you can't build them unless people can get a building permit and are not smothered with regulations. And Elizabeth and I's bill would use community development block grants, which is money from the federal government to the communities, as both a carrot and the stick. The bill passed the Senate twice. It's gone to the House. The House has changed it up, and I can't honestly tell you that we're going to be able to pass it. Right now, you see what I see. I mean, it's the Congress. Well, I shouldn't say this about the House. I'll talk about the Senate. The Senate right now looks like the Hindenburg crashed into the Titanic. It's just a multiple vehicle pilot. And primarily, that has to do with the midterm elections. And the closer we get to the midterm elections, the less the sides cooperate with each other. I don't think Senator Schumer, who's my friend, I kid him all the time. I don't think Senator Schumer is going to let Democrats vote for anything, including the housing bill. And I tell him all the time, I said, Chuck, you can't even cook a cheeseburger, man. Listen to me about housing. But I don't think he's going to budge. And I'm expecting, hope I'm wrong, but I doubt it. I expect Chuck to shut the Senate down and the government down in September, right before the election, to create chaos. I wish I didn't have to say that. It gives me no joy to say that, but there's no sense bubble wrapping it.
So is there any meaningful legislation going to be passed between now and maybe the end of July?
Well, there's so much we have to do. We have to get
Appropriations,
we have to renew FISA. We have to pass the Defense Authorization Act. I'd like to pass the Housing Act. There's a bill dealing with market structure for crypto. Our budget runs out at the end of September. I don't want to see government shut down. And my party is in the majority. But in the Senate, you have to have cooperation. And Chuck has made it very clear that he doesn't want to give the president or the Republicans any wins. That's his right. That's his right. But it just may be we'll have to wait until the new Congress and after the midterms to get a lot of this stuff done. And I regret that. The Senate is slow enough as it is. And we're criticized a lot for getting nothing done. There's some justification in that. Doing nothing is a lot harder than it looks, because you never know when you're finished. Okay, but we're set to go on a number of pieces of legislation. Now I will confess again, you see what I see. The president's thrown a few bombs into our bills and negotiations. I know the president pretty well. I've known him for 10 years. He's very accessible. I've got his, I usually keep my cell phone here. I've got his cell number. If I called him, he'll either pick up or call me back. As we all know, the president exists loudly. He has no filter. I told him once, I said, Mr. President, I was trying to be tactful. I said, you appear to grow anxious when you have an unexpressed thought. And he said, what does that mean? I said, well, you're the president. You don't have to say everything you're thinking. But he said, you think I talk too much? I said, it's not the volume, though that is an issue. It's what you say sometimes. But it is what it is, and it's not going to change.
What about the idea of some of your colleagues on the Republican side, Senator Cornyn?
Cornyn?
Yeah,
Good man.
Senator Cassidy, your colleague.
Right, good man.
You think they may hold up some of the legislation that the president wants as you move through the Senate?
I don't think they'll do it out of spite. I know Bill and John well. They're extraordinary public servants. They have feelings like you and I. Both of them got beat because of the president. But Bill and John are not going to hurt this country. You watch. We just passed a reconciliation bill. We had to do it. We had to open up the Department of Homeland Security. We had to fund ICE. We had to fund Border Patrol agents. I don't know how you feel about what's going on with immigration. I mean, to me, it's pretty simple. Illegal immigration is illegal. Duh. If you don't like that, change the law. Some of my colleagues believe in open borders. They think vetting people at the border is a racist. I don't. I think it's prudent. And we cannot secure our borders without ICE and Border Patrol. And there's a wing of the Democratic Party that wants to defund ICE. They don't want to have ICE. They also were the citizens who wanted to defund the police. Now this is un-American. You're entitled to your opinion. And I don't hate anybody. I look for grace wherever I can find it. And when I say my prayers, every single time, I ask God not to let me hate, because it's hard. So I don't hate people who think I'm wrong on the immigration laws, that they're entitled to their opinion. But I'm just telling you, the law is very clear that you have to follow certain procedures to come into our country. And these are not second-tier laws. These are laws just like all the other laws in the books. And you can't enforce them without ICE and Border Patrol agents. And that was the purpose of the bill. And that's all we were doing. And John Cornyn and Bill Cassidy, who you referenced, very easily, out of spite, could have voted no. They both voted yes.
You know, another affordability issue that you've been working on, and you've been working with some New England senators, Senator Shaheen and Senator Susan Collins, and that's the cost of insulin.
Yeah.
And you want to keep that cap at, I think, $35 a month. I think the bill continues to get more and more sponsors. So as you go through Congress.
Yeah, I hope we'll be able to pass it, Jim, and not have to start over. It basically would it's a baby step. It's not going to solve all of our problems in health care, but it would cap cost of insulin at $35. The pharmaceutical companies have been very cooperative. It's a bipartisan bill. I say it's a baby step because obviously we have other problems in terms of health care. What's so ironic, we have the best quality health care in the world. If you get sick, I don't care what other country you're in, and you can afford it, you're coming here. Our problem is the way we deliver that care. It's very inefficient. It's breathtakingly expensive. There's an enormous amount of fraud. And that's why you see, and there's no free lunch. You know, you say, well, my health care is free. No, it's not. Anything free, somebody had to work for. We have to make changes in our health care delivery system so that we can afford it. It's just that simple. And they can be made, but it takes a lot of political will, and it's going to have to be bipartisan. And someday I'll come back and we can talk about the gritty details. The first thing we have to do is introduce competition. Competition makes all of us better. But I digress. But the insulin bill, it's bipartisan. If I can get it up on the floor of the Senate, it'll pass. And I'll try to talk Chuck and let me go through. I'll promise him a fruit basket or something to let it go through. And Jean Shaheen is one of the lead authors, and Jean's just the best. I miss her. We're going to miss her.
I don't think she's ever raised a voice, did she?
She didn't. She doesn't. Jean is. I talk about her and Susan Collins in my book. They're so earnest. They're so serious. They're also delightful and wonderful personalities. I joke in the book that they're a little naive because they're so nice. That I don't remember exactly what I said. I said, Jean and Susan think WTF means, well, that's fantastic. I'm going to really miss Senator Sheehan. She's great. John will be a great replacement, but Jean is just wonderful.
If you were king for a day in the United States Senate, what would be the one thing you'd want to do?
I'd do two things. One short term, one long term. Short term. This is where our country is most at risk. We've got to protect our institutions. And let me tell you what I mean by that. The institutions are the bedrock on which our democracy is built. The only institution in which the American people have confidence right now is the military. That the military people approve many more than they disapprove. I find that very ironic because I grew up during Vietnam. The institution of the judiciary. The rule of law matters. There's this attitude now in Washington that two wrongs don't make it right, but they do make it even. I don't want to get too political here, but and again, I don't hate anybody, including and especially President Biden. But when his Justice Department decided to prosecute then former President Trump and some of former President Trump's people, whether you think they should have been prosecuted or not, they unleashed spirits they couldn't control. And I said at the time, this is dangerous. You know, prosecution, particularly of public figures, one of the criterion for prosecuting is it in the public interest? And President Biden decided to prosecute President Trump, whether you like him or not. He was a former president, and he happened to be the current opponent of the existing president. And I said, American people are going to say this is political. And you're going to unleash spirits you can't control. And here we are. And it's not good. And it's not healthy. We don't prosecute our political enemies in America just because they're political enemies. That's the sort of thing that happens in countries whose Powerball jackpot is 287 chickens and a goat. It doesn't happen in America. And I've had long talks with President Trump about this and with his people. That's what I mean by the institution of public health. I'm not going to get into who's at fault, but the truth is public health, everybody, when there's a pronouncement from the Surgeon General or public health care officials in Washington, people listen. Now they don't anymore. We have a debate every single time. That's dangerous. I told Bobby Kennedy when he came to my office and asked me to vote to confirm him, I said, Bobby, you've got one job. Restore confidence in the institution of public health. Judiciary. You can't ignore a federal court order. You can not like it. You can disagree with it. You can appeal it. But you can't ignore a federal court order. That's what I mean by our institutions. They'll hold, but there are cracks in them. And short term, that's what I see my job, is helping to restore confidence. Long term, if I could just mention this. This is the greatest country in all of human history. And look, and I believe it, the whole world knows it. It's not just my opinion. When's the last time you heard of somebody trying to sneak into China? They want to come here. But, and I know all about inflation, and we can talk about it if you want, but I wouldn't trade our economy right now with the economy of any other developed country. I wouldn't trade our standard of living. I know that things are too expensive. But there's this, and America, since it was founded, we have invented the rest of the world. We always have been in the lead. But despite all that, there is a dread, a gloominess in America. If you talk to our young people, they think their lives are not going to be as good and certainly not better than their parents. And if you poll the American people, they're not happy. They just think the country's headed in the wrong direction. And that's not a comment about President Trump or President Biden. They felt that way a long time. And we've got to get our shine back. You ask people about Congress. Congress polls right up there with gonorrhea. Okay? It's like neck and neck. Now, we've never polled well, but people shouldn't believe that everybody in Congress is a thief. And that's longer term is something that we're going to have to work on. We need to be confident. We shouldn't fear the future. We ought to grab for our future. And China's watching all of this, every bit of it. Sorry to go on too long, but
You have the cell phone to the president. The president obviously can call you. Has he called you in the last day to give you a little heads up what the good news will be coming on the Iran situation?
no, the president is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And look, here's my relationship with the president. I've known him for 10 years. We have very different styles. I don't go hang out at the White House. Some of my colleagues do. They like being near power. I've just never been a groupie. I kind of play outside the pocket. I'll never completely fit in. That's one of my best qualities. So I don't go to the White House unless the president calls to see me. Last time I saw him a week before last, he asked me to come over to talk about the housing bill. Mm-hmm. We talked about it for about 2 hours. Well, he talked. I talked a little bit, but we're very, very candid with each other. And he will call on some occasions. If the phone rings at 2 in the morning, I'll know it's Trump, because he doesn't sleep. And we're very frank with each other. Sometimes he gets mad at me. I killed one of his judicial nominations one time. The gentleman, nice guy, wasn't qualified. So I killed him dead as Woodrow Wilson. And I don't think the president, he didn't yell at me. He didn't curse at me, though he has before. He accepted it pretty well, but there have been other occasions when he's never talked about my mama, but he's used some pretty strong words. But that's him. I like him. What you see is what you get.
What were your thoughts when they were talking about a 1.8 billion funding weaponization of the Justice Department, maybe using some of those funds to compensate some people that may have been involved in January 6th? They weren't excluded. Mm-hmm.
Well,
caused a great uproar.
We were just about to pass the bill to fund ICE and Border Patrol. And the votes were lined up, ready to go. And the president, as is his right, decided that he wanted to add to it this weaponization fund. And his point was that, and he's correct, that on occasion the federal government, through its immense power, has abused citizens. And citizens should have recourse. And he wanted to set up an anti-weaponization fund so people could apply and get money. Well, his proposal, that's the entire proposal. We didn't have any details. There was no meat on the bone. It was a surprise. Also, we already have a fund set up in the Justice Department to do that. It's called the Judgment Fund. We already have a mechanism to do that. If you think you've been abused by the government, you can file a lawsuit under the Federal Torts Claim Act. And if you can convince a judge, you can get money. We had so many questions, and we were just about to get our bill passed to fund ICE and Border Patrol. And there was a lot of pushback in the Senate. And the president pushed us back, and we pushed him back. It was an honest disagreement, and he backed off. To his credit, he did. But and Todd Blanche, the Attorney General, says it's done with, and I take Todd at his word. But that's honestly what happened.
You know, the senator wants to hear from you. We have a limited amount of time. But if somebody has a question.
Yeah, I'd love to see what's on your mind.
My only other question would be with you, Senator, is that this is politics and eggs. Usually somebody who comes here has some in the back of mind or her mind that maybe they look at 28. Obviously, you may be here just to talk about policy and what's going on in Congress, but you know, you have a good name. I don't know if you're interested in 28.
Well, I'll tell you a story about my name. I talked about it in the book. I'm not trying to dodge. I'll answer your question. First time I ran for office, I was working for a governor, and I thought I'd run. Wanted to be Attorney General of Louisiana. I lost. But I hired a pollster, a friend of mine. He came back, and he said, Kennedy, I got the poll done. I got good news and bad news. I said, what's the good news? He said, 40%. The good news is 40% of the people know who you are. I said, man, that's awesome. He said, the bad news is 40%. Those 40% think you're the dead president's son. I'll take it any way I can get it.
Well,
28.
yeah.
It's going to be a very important election for America. I'm happy as a United States Senator. Plan to run for re-election. You never say never. It kind of leaked in Washington that not long ago some folks came to see me, and maybe they have more money than brains, but they have a lot of money, and said, you know, you ought to think about 28. It'd be fun. And I just said, look, you know, I got one thing on my mind right now, midterm elections. Like this man right here and some others. And that's probably all I ought to say. You know, frankly, what's the old saying? A wise man once said nothing. Why? Because he's a wise man.
Well, we have a couple of minutes.
Yeah, what's on your mind?
Just identify yourself. Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Hi,
Good morning, and thank you for being here.
thank you.
I'm an AARP volunteer, so obviously my question is going to be about Social Security.
Yes, ma'am.
We all know there's
If you wait for the mic so everyone can hear the question.
there's an expected shortfall
Yes,
in
ma'am.
the next 10 years. Some people are shrinking that up to 6 years, depending on what you include in that bucket. But if Congress doesn't act, then people who work very hard for these funds and who rely on it quite heavily are going to be expecting a shortfall and a cut. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about bipartisan path to preserving Social Security as it exists today.
I want to make this very clear because the press hasn't. Social Security is not going anywhere. Your Social Security is safe. You can write that down and take it home to mama. Now, all this talk about a trust fund, there is a trust fund, but the money's not segregated. If you go to the trust fund, it's a bunch of IOUs from the federal government. The federal government has borrowed all the money. There's no money there. So if the trust fund runs dry and the press has a grand mal seizure, says, oh, there's no money for... All we've got to do is go take the money out of the general fund, which we always do. We're not going to run out of money for Social Security. And Social Security benefits aren't going to be cut. Now, at some point, it won't happen from the midterm elections. We need to have a conversation in Congress, hopefully involving the president and with the American people, about what's happening to Social Security. And the main thing that's happening is y'all aren't having enough babies. You know, you need to go make a baby. I'm pretty sure it's more fun than anything you're doing right now. And people aren't having babies, and so we don't have enough people to pay into the fund. That's the biggest problem. We're not the only country that has that problem. Japanese, they're not making babies, even the Chinese. But that is the problem. But they just keep scaring people that Social Security is going to run out. It will not run out. Congress will not let that happen. And the trust fund is a fiction. I'm sorry. It just is.
Questions?
That's a good question, man.
General Hammond?
Just following up on that.
Thank you, General, for your service.
Fully support.
Why don't you just wait for the mic, General?
Just following up on that, making babies. I think one of the challenges we touched on earlier is this feeling of impending doom that there is no future for these folks. So a lot of these young people today are choosing not to have babies, not to grow, because they can afford them in their lives. And I think that is part of the problem moving forward, moving the country forward. And then the other piece to it is, I think we really need to look at how we improve legal immigration so we can fill some of these jobs that are needed to help drive the economy. I'd be interested to hear some of your thoughts.
I support legal immigration. So do the American people. Let me tell you how the average American looks at the immigration issue. Obviously, the issue is the southern border. The average American says, look, I lock my front door at night. Most Americans do. I bet most of you do. Why do people lock their front door at night? They don't lock their front door at night because they hate everybody out there in the world. They lock their front door at night because they love the people on the inside. And they want to know who's coming into and out of their house. That doesn't mean that they hate everybody else and they'll never talk to them, and especially if they're from another country. And that's the way people look at the southern border. They want it secure. Now, I'm just telling you how it is. For whatever reason, President Biden gave in to the people who were pushing him. We had open borders. For 4 years, we have between 8 and, we don't really know, 15 million people in our country. We don't have some idea who they are or where most of them are. I'm sure many of them are fine people. I've met some of them. But there's some other folks that aren't fine people. And as a result of that controversy, it has impacted legal immigration. If a Nigerian doctor or a German plumber wants to come to America, we should welcome him. Now, we have rules set up, and those rules are too cumbersome, and there are too many agencies involved, and we should reform those rules. But it's because of the controversy over illegal immigration, nobody wants to get together and talk about reforming the legal immigration. But the real problem, and I'm biased, and again, I don't want to get political, because people have the right to their opinion. But a huge segment of one of our political parties, the segment that is in control, honestly believes in open borders. That is their right. I'm not saying they're wrong to have that opinion, but no other country in the world does that. And we tried it, and it ended in chaos. And that's the problem. Eventually, with the border secure, and the southern border is secure, things will calm down, and we'll be able to have, everybody can take their meds, and we'll be able to have an adult conversation about our legal immigration system. Because the truth is, we don't get the credit. Even as broken as it is, we still admit about 1 million people a year illegally, more than any other country in the world.
Question over here. Just identify yourself.
Good morning, my name is James Lamasama.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
James.
Hey, James. All right, man.
Nice to meet you.
Pay your taxes, man. We need the money.
That's what I'm here for.
And I hear you. Thanks, man.
So I'm glad you mentioned institutions, because that's actually part of the question I have formulated for you guys as well. I think we can all agree over the past few decades, probably there's been a steady degradation of trust.
Yes.
In all institutions, business, media, politics. So I guess the two-pronged question is, where and how do you feel like that degradation began to happen, and why? And what is it that both public and private leaders now can do, as you mentioned, to restore that trust? How do we do that?
Well, we take our politics seriously in America. That's a good thing. If you go back and read, who wrote it? Tocqueville's book, Democracy in America in the 1830s. We bitterly contested elections back then, and we do now. But after, in the 1830s, let's say, candidates would fight and cuss and spit and run hard, but then, and people were engaged, and then the election was over, it kind of went back to normal. Our politics have not gone back to normal. Half of this country disagrees with the other half. That's fine. But the problem is that half of this country thinks the half that disagrees with them is not just in error, but they're in sin. They're immoral people. And vice versa. And that's not true. And that's not healthy. And that's what started. Let's take the institution of federal judgment. You may disagree with the federal judgment, federal opinion. I have sometimes, many times. You don't just say, well, they're wrong, they're a bunch of politicians in robes, and I'm not going to follow it. It's not our federal judiciary. You obey the law. Let's take the institution of higher education. It's gotten way too expensive. That's part of that is federal government's fault. We started giving away free money, and kids took out loans, and the universities happily took that money. And I have I'm a Chicago school higher ed follower. The purpose of a university is to make people think, not make people feel comfortable. But there are cracks in our higher education system. I'm watching I believe in a liberal arts education. I don't think universities ought to be vocational schools. Yeah, you ought to be able to get a good job with a degree. But if you want to major in history or philosophy, I'm all for it. Higher ed college teaches you how to think. I mean, St. A's is a great liberal arts school. All of our really good liberal, I'm not saying it's true for St. A's, but our small liberal arts schools throughout America they don't worry about people getting a job, they just give kids a good liberal arts education, they're in jeopardy. They're worth protecting. I mean, I could go on with all the institutions. And people have got to stop, in my opinion, bashing the institution. You can disagree with the conduct without saying, as some of my Democrat friends do, the Supreme Court, they're all on the take and we need to pack the court. That's nonsense. That's nonsense on steroids, and it's not healthy.
You propose in your book that members of Congress should spend a little time as a substitute teacher
Yeah.
in the classroom. How did that come about? And
I was sitting in 2003, I was state treasurer. I was sitting in a legislative committee. I had a bill coming up in the state legislature and heard all these experts talking about our public schools. And I said, I bet not one of these people has been in a public school, but they were all experts. So when I got back to my office, I called my local school system and I said, what does it take to be a substitute teacher? And they said, all you got to have is a college degree and go to a short orientation. So I went down and applied and they accepted me. They figured they were hurting bad. They'd even take politicians. And I started doing it. I used to do it 3 times a year. I learned more about public education doing that. I insisted on being a real teacher. No other teacher in the classroom. You start at 6:45, 7:45 to 8, go to 2:45, have bus duty, lunchroom duty, and at the end of the day, you are worn out. There's no more important job. And it was clear to me, every time I still do it, I try to do it now at least once a year. It's really hard being a teacher today, much harder than and it's harder being a kid. These kids are seeing things in the 7th grade that I never saw when I was in college. And I mean, that's an institution. We're doing a little bit better. But we've sort of lost sight of how important it is having these big political fights. But I don't know, I'm talking too much, but if you get a chance, you ought to volunteer to substitute. I mean, you will see. You'll see stuff that breaks your heart, but you'll see stuff that lifts your spirits. But there's nothing more important. I helped pass a bill in the Louisiana legislature. We got beat up for it 2 years ago that said, look, if you're at the end of the 3rd grade and you can't read, you can't go for any further. We're not going to let you go to the 4th grade if you can't read. Oh man, all heck broke loose. A lot of the administrators got mad and they said, you're going to hurt our numbers and our scores and this is unfair and you're going to hurt these kids' self-esteem. I said, well, you want to hurt their self-esteem, give them a high school diploma and send them out there in the real world. So we passed the bill. Kid gets 3 chances to show he can read. If he can't, he's held back. Intensive remediation. And it worked. It worked. I didn't invent this. I copied it from Mississippi. And I got no pride. I was still a good idea. And now everybody's for it. But those are the sort of things. But it was hard to pass that bill. I was called, anti-teacher. I was called everything but an ignorant slut. But it worked.
I don't know about Louisiana. Do you have a prohibition of iPhones in the classrooms?
We do, but there's a debate about getting them out. Okay. I mean, don't get me started on social media. It's made our lives better in some respects. Made people less lonely. Made it, any individual can become a news reporter. All you have to do is post. On the other hand, it's become a cesspool of snark. And it is a distraction. And I think eventually you'll see many states are just starting to say, at least in elementary school, no phones.
Well, we want to thank the Senator for being here, for candid, informative, enlightening conversation, to say the least. And Again, not to be shameless, but a great summer read. I think you'll learn a lot also in how the Senate works. Yes, ma'am.
Can I say one more?
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
I see that there are a few books there.
Yes.
There are people that have asked, can they buy?
Can they,
There are people that have asked, my name
If-
is Sheila.
if they could buy the
Jill,
book?
how are you?
I'm great.
Good.
So, but there are people that have asked about buying the book today, so there are 4 or 5 of them there. Can they do it?
They can have
I
it,
guess
for all
they
I
can.
know. I don't know, that's above my
Yeah.
pay grade.
Well, thank,
We can ask my guys here.
thank you for the softball question.
Sheila's a trustee, so
Yeah,
he tells me
yeah.
she's gonna get one.
Yeah, she's gonna get one. You got one coming. You have one coming.
I'm running Sheila for president.
Yeah. Some of you.